Throughout this series, Best Year Ever, we've been talking about this period in our life from our birth to our death and how important this is, but also trying to grab a focus on something that we don't think about enough, and that is what happens right here, not just at this moment, but what changes at this moment that lasts all the way out through eternity, and how we're living our life right here. In light of all that's ahead of us, it should really change how we see these things. Because see, a lot of you are planners. A lot of you are like, I'm all about making this the best year ever, David, but I'm not about just one big splash. I'm fairly thoughtful, consistent, little progress each year. Not like gigantic step this year. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people that have that mentality, they're also very, very conscientious about this portion. But oftentimes they lose focus all the way out here. And the reason why is this. Because when you start looking at this part in light of all of this part, it might lead you to do some crazy things perceptive-wise here. Because, a lot of your friends and a lot of your neighbors, a lot of your coworkers, this is pretty much the totality of their perspective. They don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about eternity. They don't spend a whole lot of time just not thinking about eternity, but thinking about how things in this life impact eternity. And so when you're around them, most of the time, this is the topic of our conversation, and we start getting into financial planning or, what's our family like, or what's our future like, or, weddings and college and, all this stuff. And you're just kind of, we just got to be thoughtful and, save well and a little bit away, and let's make a difference so that we're ready for this. And you're so good at that. Honestly, one of the reasons you live out here in suburbia is because you're generally good at that. I mean, whether you've got a college degree or not, you've got a certain level of education. It's put you in a place where you can afford to be where you live now. And you've made a plan, and you've engaged that plan, and it's kind of working. And you're good at that kind of planning. But then, when it gets here, man, like the same planning that you use for here doesn't translate into your life for eternity. And I'm really trying to get you to grab a hold of the fact that in comparison, this is just such a small part of who you are. This experience on this earth is just a small part. And there are things that are going to last for eternity, and there's things that are not going to last for eternity. And one of the things that we know is going to last for eternity as people. Every person is they were created to last for eternity. Every person you meet eyes with, every person you rub shoulders with, every person you work with, you live around, you go to school with, every person is going to live for eternity. And God's got a plan for every person. And He's got a plan for you to impact the people that are right around you. And I know that kind of gets into this, oh, wow, like, David, that's really pushing into some of their lives. Wow, that's like really impacting and saying, hey, you for somebody who doesn't think about eternity, you got to help them get a grip on eternity. And that sounds somewhat fanatical. And it is. But you know what? I mean, it's no more fanatical than we are about things in this life. I mean, come on, really? We live in Charlotte. We're going to the Super Bowl next week, right? I mean, like we'll drop out of work to go to a rally, all right? We'll spend $40 on a T-shirt or more. Yes, you did it, didn't you? Or a hat, so worth it. See, and consider it worth it. That's what, I mean, like, we'll do things that aren't normally reasonable. And consider it worth it and enjoy it. Because we're fanatical about it. So let's just expand that out. I mean, if we can be that into and that about, our local sports team, which I'm all about too, and I'm going to have my Cam Newton jersey on next Sunday, so just bring yours, okay? No Bronco jerseys allowed, all right? I saw one this morning, but his parents are out of town, so I'm going to give him a break. If we can be that wrapped up in this, surely our hearts can get wrapped up in something that is so much bigger, so much greater. And we can be fanatical about it in a way that actually, at the end, we'll say, it's so worth it. So let's dive into something, because here's the thing. Every once in a while in this life, there's a few moments that come along. There's a few opportunities that come along that allow you to be invited into something that is so much bigger than yourself, so much bigger than any one of us, and will last so much longer than any of us sitting here. It's moments in time where God says, hey, you know what? This is what I'm about to do, and I want to use you guys to do it. And in order to do that, it's going to require a lot of faith and adjustment on your part to join me in my work. These are opportunities to just step through, if you will, a door that God's opening. And it's a door that if we step through it as a church, if we step through this together, it will send ripples all throughout eternity. But the opportunity is now. And so we're going to dive into it. So today's going to be a little bit different, because I just feel like God's been opening some doors. I don't feel like, I know God's been opening some doors, and He's inviting us as a church to step through these doors. So here's what it is. We have a contract on a piece of property. For those of you that haven't been here, a long time, we're a little over 15 years old, and we've never had a contract on property, because it's just not been in our DNA to be that consumed and wrapped up with property. In fact, I'll tell you why in just a second. But right now, we have contract on 9.5 acres of property. It's prime property. It's located close to 485 on Rocky River, this side of 485. So before you get to Bojangles and Harris Teeter, this property is on your left right before you get there. It's directly across from the main entrance to the new emergency care center. And none of this property was really even for sale 6 months ago. And so before I dive in and show you the details of where this is at and what the plan is, I kind of want to make sure we got the vision for what our future home is going to be like. Because one of the reasons that we're 15 years into this and we've never said, hey, let's buy some land and build a church, is this, okay? So the first reason is this. We believe that church is people, not a place. And so we've always stayed really focused on what does it mean to serve people, what does it mean to love people, and what does it mean to reach people. And generally, when you start answering those questions, a building doesn't necessarily fit in all those categories. And so we've always believed that church is people, not a place. And we will continue to believe this after we step through this door. After the Lord provides us a place that is our home, we will still not function as if church is a building. And for the most part, I hear a lot of people that say that, but the people that say that are people who are already in a building. And so, that's easy. But honestly, I want to kind of pat you guys on the back. For 15 years, there's not a lot of churches that do mobile church for 15 years. And last Sunday was really I just thought, really, God, like part of stepping through this door, the very first time in 15 years that we've ever had to stop or cancel services. For that little dusting of snow, okay? And I'm like, this is God saying, hey, all right, you can't always be dependent For 15 years, we've been consistent. And then last week, it's like, So we're people, and that's what the church is. And it's been great to be able to push that out there and say that and mean it, because you guys are a powerful, powerful church, okay? And you've done tremendous, tremendous work together, apart from having a home to call your own. You know, the thing about this is that reaching people, you get to the place where whatever we do moving forward is going to extend love more, is going to extend hope more, and is going to help people find faith more. And we really believe that at this point we've found a model that will allow us to continue to do that. The second part of the vision for Venture's future home is that it would be economically sustainable. I don't really know. This is just a little primer. It's probably more than you want to know, but here's the thing. Like, when you start a new church, usually the first item on the agenda, outside of just pulling off your first service and gathering a crowd, is find a piece of land and, put your mock-up of what building you're on, but so that people can be like, there it is. Let's go do it. And the thing about it is, a lot of churches, they'll like, okay, so let's pull all our money, let's sacrifice, and people sacrifice and sacrifice and sacrifice, and they get this big down payment, and then they get the down payment done, but the problem is that they've sacrificed everything for the down payment, and now they got a huge mortgage. And so then what they have to do is they have to leverage their crowd. They have to say, hey guys, we got here, but it's not over yet, And some of you have done that before. You've bit off a little bit more than you can chew. And what starts to happen is they don't start thinking, wow, how can we pack 100,000 meals? You know why I don't think that? Because it costs $28,000. And when you've got $28,000 monthly mortgage payment, it's kind of hard to think, hey, let's just add that and jump in. And what subtly begins to happen is their ministry or their mission begins to shift, and it has to service the building. And I'll be honest with you, this one idea is why we're sitting here 15 years and we haven't jumped in, because I've never wanted the building to drive, to dictate what our ministry and our mission was. And so we've had the freedom to think. We've had the freedom to say, hey, let's buy a bus. Not so we can buy a bus. Let's buy a bus so it's cheaper to get more people down to Mexico so we can build houses for people. Let's figure out how to reach an unreached people group halfway around the world. Let's throw a gigantic party and invite everybody in Harrisburg 3 or 4 times a year, and let's make it all free. How about that? Like, these are things that other churches don't do, and they don't because some of them can't financially. But they got a building. Let me tell you what's more subtle, or what's more subtle, but even maybe more damaging. You see, when Jesus leaves this earth, he tells his disciples the Great Commission. The Great Commission starts with a word. Anybody? Go. When we build a building, what's the first word we use? Come. Go, come. Is that opposite? You see, like, when we listen to Jesus' words, it's go. It's initiative, it's engage, it's offense, right? And it's saying, I'm going to leave where I'm at now, and I'm going to go. And that might be around the corner, around the world, but it's go. But see, when you build a building, then what? Everything has to kind of revolve around that, and then we have to start saying, hey, come to church. And church becomes the place to come to. Now, all of that isn't terribly damaging, except for the fact that when churches build buildings, they typically build empty parking lots 6 days a week. I mean, just drive by a local church tomorrow. There's a couple in our immediate community that do a phenomenal job. I mean, I rarely drive by the Methodist church on 49 without cars in that parking lot. So I give them total credit because they max out that building, a lot of days a week. But typically, the majority of churches around here, they build in 6 days an empty parking lot. And so then they start to think, hold on, we built this building. It's just sitting here 6 days. That's not good stewardship. Inherently, they know that. So what do we got to do? Well, let's have Bible study. And so let's do this on this night, and this on this night, and this on this night. And then sooner or later, the church becomes closed off from the world that God has called us to reach. Okay, so that's probably way more than you wanted to know. But let me tell you, these are the things that God has consumed me with for years and years and years. And this is why, if you didn't know that, we're in a school 15 years later. Because whatever we do, it will be economically sustainable. Meaning, we are going to step into some for-profit, nonprofit partnerships where we build something that the community naturally comes to, not for church, but for the most important events of their life, their birthdays, their weddings, their retirement parties, time where they need out-of-town company, and they stay there, and we do all kinds of different events there. Places to take care of our kids during the week while we go to work. Like, we go to this building over and over and over and over again, not for church, but for things that we enjoy and being connected to our community. And those are for-profit things. Those are things that people pay a lot of money for. And then on Sundays, it does convert. And in some ways, it's not too much different than what we do now, other than the fact that we ultimately control the building, in a sense, through this partnership. We're part of this partnership. And ultimately, the businesses that function there and the profit and revenue that's made there won't drain the church, but it will actually add dollars to the church, so that when I thought, after we packed 100,000 meals, I was like, wonder what it would be like to pack 1,000,000 meals. And I started going through the logistics of that, and I thought, I think it's really possible. I don't even think it'll take us 4 days. I'm not even worried about the labor. I'm not. We're going to do it at some point. But then I like $280,000. Like, that's a different ball game, right? I'm telling you, HCM me. I know God called us to it, and it's like, okay, it's going to happen at some point. When it does, you know, like, this is the day that it's out there. Because we're going to have some for-profit partners, and their heartbeat is not just to run a good business, but their heartbeat is to pour resources into the kingdom work. So that's our second thing, is that it's economically sustainable. The third thing about the vision for our future home is that it's naturally connected to the community. So for 15 years, we've been focused out into our community and out into our world. I've said this before, churches spend a whole lot on their building, that it changes the way they do ministry. It changes how they relate to the community around them. And so we're going to be in a partnership with a structure and a facility. Our home is going to be not a place that just people say, oh, that's where I go to church, but hey, that's where I go for any number of things. That's the coffee shop that I go to hang out in and to meet with people. That's the place that we get together with this group and that group. And oh yeah, I was there. And on top of that, it's not just us. It's our whole community coming to this building and us being able to interact with them in a natural way that's going to open doors for ministry. And so that's what it is, naturally connected. We're not going to have to go out and try to figure out, how do we get people to this building? The very nature of living their lives and celebrating what they celebrate is going to bring them to the building and give us that opportunity. So let me show you a couple of maps on where this property is at. X marks the spot. Here's Hickory Ridge High School, 485. This is exit 36. So when you get off exit 36 and you head towards Harrisburg, the Harris Teeter is right there on your right, and then Bojangles. And then right beside Bojangles on your right, there's an empty field. It's not that one. But it's right next to that empty field. Show the next picture real quick. So this is the Harris Teeter area. This is the new emergency center, and this is the 9.5 acres of property. The front portion currently has a house that nobody lives in, and then the back portion has a water tower, and so you can't miss it. All right, and so we have a contract on a water tower. How's that? So we're thinking about doing our first elevated baptism here. And I'm just kidding. Forget it. No, we won't do that. And so that's the property. Go a little bit closer there. Okay, so you got a little bit better perspective of where that is. So here's the water tower, and here's kind of how the property is shaped. Let me tell you maybe God's provision on this thing, and just stay right here on this. Because here's the place where we just feel like this is not just a human ingenuity, okay? One, because we're just not that smart. Two, because we couldn't figure this out and make this big of a deal, even if we tried, all right? But here's the reality of how this is unfolded. So I found a partner who actually knows how to run sustainable businesses that are kingdom focused and that are partnerships with the church. And they've done this for several years, so they have a track record. It's the only person in the country that I know that has this kind of track record. And I've been talking with him for the last 4.5, 5 years. And he came out in the summer, and I was like, just come out. It's the second time that he'd been out here. And let's just kind of drive around and find it. And I was really thinking, because I'm thinking, wow, this is a great little piece of property right here, right next to the shopping center, and it doesn't have any trees on it, and it's clean. Here we go. And so we drove up to it, and I'm like, what do you think? And I mean, it took him 3 seconds to just say, no, that's not it. I'm like, he's like, well, Dave, here's the thing. If you look at the right side of the property and the left side of the property, that's about a 45-foot drop. It doesn't matter how good a deal you get on this property. You got about $1.5 million worth of land moving in order to develop that property. So right off the bat, you just don't want that. I was like, oh, yeah, I knew that. And then he did like this. He's like, what about this property right here? And he starts walking right over here. And then he starts walking, and we walk all the way back there. And I'm like, I'm not sure we're supposed to be here. He's like, it'd be all right. And then he just kind of, he's like, I think this looks good. Who owns it? I don't even know if it's for sale. Turns out it wasn't for sale. So we figured out, this homeowner right here, he owns this part up here, about 4 acres. This is not a good. I didn't do good drawing those boundaries, but it's close. And so we called him, and somebody in our church knows him. And we sat in his living room and said, we talked for about a month and tried to figure out. And then, you know what? I think it's about ready. This is about ready for us to sell this. It's about time. And so we got a contract on this 4 acres. Honestly, we paid market value for that contract. Actually, a little bit less than market value. But let me tell you this. Acreage in and around this interchange, 485 and Rocky River, the property that little medical building is 4 acres, and it was sold for $225,000 an acre. This is not cheap property, all right? $200,000 an acre is about the minimum, that you're going to think about here. And it's about what we paid on our contract is for these 4 acres. But then we look back in the back and I wonder who owns this town. Well, so we started figuring out this is a 5-acre parcel, and it's all about the water tower. Well, the city owns that, and the city owns it because it was given to them once they ran city water to Cabarrus Woods neighborhood that this water tower used to feed. Now they don't need it. It's a defunct water tower. In fact, the town really wants somebody to tear it down. They just don't want to pay for it. And so we put a bid on that property. And This 5 acres that's landlocked by everything around it, this 5 acres we got a contract on for $75,000 total. Not per acre, but total. So that puts our land cost for the total 9.5 acres at under $100,000 an acre. So here's the reality on this, guys. This is where I feel like God just opens the door. Because when he invites us to do something, it's usually this partnership of the faith that it takes on our part to believe that God's at work and to believe that he rewards those who seek him. That's what faith is. And that requires faith and action on our part. And so rarely does he just come in and just go, here we go. It requires faith on our part. But at the same time, our little bit of faith, our mustard seed faith, our tiny faith that's expressed in action gets met with the abundance of God. So when we close on this property in 3 months, we're going to pay $925,000 for this property. The day we close on it, it'll be worth at least $2 million. And so, you just kind of think, okay, this is the door that God is opening. Neither of these pieces of property were even for sale 6 months ago. And now, God's opened door after door and said, here we go. Step in it. The second, so that's God's provision, is just on the cost alone. The second provision that God has just led us to is really the right partners. Because we found some partners that I've talked with, and we've been working with them, leadership, for several years now. But they're businesses that naturally serve and naturally connect to the community. They are a coffee shop. They are an events center. And so if you think this is where all our kids will end up getting married probably, banquets, celebrations, retirement parties, company get-togethers, so forth. It's all wrapped up in this facility. It's attached as well to a hotel for a lot of these events. And then it also has a daycare portion. So daycare is a gigantic, gigantic need in our community right now. And that doesn't even factor in future growth. Okay? And so this is a place, and these are partners that know how to run these businesses. We don't have to run these businesses. They're going to run these businesses because they know how to. They know how to make a profit on these businesses, and they know how to use that profit to grow the kingdom. And so, ultimately, this profit will actually pay for the building itself, so we don't have to. That's a real big deal. So here's kind of how this works. So our part of the partnership, as a church is a partner, our part of the partnership is to buy the land. So we've got a giant-sized task of $925,000. That's really big. And we have 3 months to figure it out. So $925,000, but let me tell you this. I know some of you are like, wow, that is almost $1 million. I almost said, hey, it's just $1 million, but that sounds so big. 925. Let's stick with that. How about that? $925,000. And it's gigantic. But let me tell you what that does. That's our part of the partnership. We buy the land. Our partners build the buildings and the businesses that operate. And once we buy the land, we won't have to put another dollar into this. Not to pay for any of the rest of it, not for maintenance on it, not for replacing carpet, not for redoing landscape, not for any of it. And in the big picture, the models that they're working with and the churches that they work with are seeing revenue streams that these businesses are pouring into the church, allowing the church to grow their mission and ministry out in the world. We still have to come up with $925,000. But it's here's the big kickers. One is the moment we do that, our equity doubles. So our partnership, once we get to 925, our partnership in the whole is not going to be 925. Our partnership in the whole is going to be how much that land is valued at. And I'm telling you, it's going to be at least $2 million. So that increases our portion of the partnership, which increases the portion and percentage of the revenue that comes back in to fund ministry. But again, the biggest part of this is that this is a model that works, that yes, we have to step in and we have to bite off this first chunk, but we are not biting off a gigantic down payment only to be met with a monthly gigantic payment from now for the next 20 years. And we're not going to be strapped financially by a building, and yet we're going to be a partner in this. And we're going to have opportunity in this to do what we want to do throughout the week. So that's kind of what the next 3 months look like. I've told our staff and told our elders, and by the way, just you got a great staff, you got a great group of elders. We've been talking about this for months and months and months. We've been talking about it, elders, for over 9 years. Okay, this is not a new idea. And everybody, leadership-wise, staff and elders, is completely on board with this because we processed it over and over and over again together. So over the next 3 months, we're going to step into a capital focus campaign that says, here's this opportunity, guys. Here's this, like I talked to a few people that helped me start this church. I mean, they're not here because there wasn't anybody here when we started the church. That's why we started the church. But I tell them what's going on, and I show them baptism video. And they're like, man, I'm so glad that I wrote you a check every month for 3 years to help you get this rolling. And they celebrate in a way that you don't celebrate because they got in like on this opportunity. And right now is one of those opportunities because let me tell you, I'm not just focused on this church. I'm trying to get a model out there, and these partners are trying to get a model out there, not just for our church, but for church after church after church, to quit leveraging and sacrificing their future ministry for the sake of a building, and instead think differently about it. And if we can put a model on the ground that makes this happen, and this won't be the very first one, but we start the ball rolling with these partners, and years from now, I really believe this is the only thing churches will be doing because it's the only way you can be a great steward of God's resources. And so you got an opportunity right here. And look, here's the reality. All buildings, they're going to end at this point. So I'm not deceived here. All buildings are going to be done with at this point. When the world ends, it's over. Okay? But people are going to last. And we want to build a building that helps us to get closer and closer to people, day in, day out, in a natural way, and that God can use our relationships with them to change their eternity. I want to close with a passage because this is a passage that, it's always impacted. But let me back up for a second because here's what I need you to do. All right. So you're like, what do I need to do? Here's the first thing I need to do. I need you to save 3 days. I need you to save these dates. Okay, so you can write them down. They're a little over a month away, but it is March 3rd, March 4th, and March 5th. All right. And March 3rd and 4th are Thursday and Friday. And so Thursday and Friday, 6 to 9 o'clock, we're going to have childcare for this. You don't have to worry about that. But from 6 to 9 o'clock on Thursday night and Friday night, and then from 9 a.m. on Saturday morning to about 4 p.m. So pretty much all day Saturday. So Thursday, Friday night, all day Saturday. we are doing this BE 101 or BE workshop. And our partners are going to be in. They're going to be leading this. This is their course. This is how they help forge a partnership. This is how they help coach us to be good stewards of what God is doing. These guys are great kingdom-minded thinkers. They have amazing experience as you listen to their stories about how this works and how it's worked out in their lives for 20 years. Like you'll start to see, oh yeah, these guys know what they're doing. And it's going to start the journey for you. It's going to start the journey not to think like building, but to think stewardship. Like how do I actually understand that everything belongs to God and that He's entrusted it to us? And so I don't know how to say this. Like if you like me at all, and you've ever thought at any point in your life, ever, I think I'd like to do something nice for David. This is it. It's literally just clear your calendar and show up. I can't be even more like if this church has meant anything to you, like just put aside whatever you have planned up to this point and be here. Because I'll tell you this, regardless of your part in the building, this can transform your life beyond the building. But it is the kickoff for about a 6-week period that's going to lead up to April 17th, to where I'm praying that the Lord, through His people, raises $925,000, and we close on this property at the end of April. It's a big deal, guys. It's bigger than us. And yet, that's what God's leading us to. Here's the leadership. So have I emphasized that enough? We're going to remove every barrier for this. All right? But please, make it a priority. Be there. In the Bible, this is how God leads people to big things. In general way, this is, he calls individuals and He gives individuals a vision. Rarely does He give everybody a vision. But like Moses, He said, hey, I need you to, free my people. And so He calls individuals. And throughout the scriptures, there's an individual. And God says, hey, you, Mary. Hey, you. Hey, you. Here we go. And He gives them a vision, and I like to call it a burden, because it's a vision when you keep carrying it for a long time, and it feels like a burden because you'd like to just set it aside, but God won't let you. That's when you know it's from God. And He does that with individuals. Listen, for 12 years, this has been the burden that God's given me. And that's why we've not made progress on land and building, because this is the only progress I wanted to make, because this is what God has given me as the vision for the future for this place. And so thanks for being patient. Thanks for enduring set up and tear down. And Lord willing, we'll still have a couple more years of that, but maybe the end's in sight. The second way that He leads people is that He surrounds leaders with groups of people or groups of leaders. And you think of how those groups of people have reacted throughout the Bible. I mean, I just think Jesus, he calls, he calls 12 disciples. It's like, this is the inner circle. Let's go, guys. This is how I'm going to work through. I'm going to really pour my life into you, and that's going to happen. And I think Jesus, wow, like even Jesus, perfect Jesus, greatest leader in human history, Jesus, still only got 11 out of 12 to follow Him, really. I mean, seriously. Because leaders make choices, and those choices have consequences. Like the groups, the inner circle group. So like when the nation of Israel is about to step into the promised land and Moses has delivered them, they come through the Red Sea and they're rescued from Pharaoh, and Pharaoh and his army is wiped out, and they've seen all that, and they get to the edge and they're like, hey, let's send a group of spies out into the promised land to kind of scout out where we're going next. And they come back and there's only 2 of that group of people that say, yeah, let's take the land. Everybody else is like, man, those guys are really big. And yeah, it's a great place, but I just don't see how we're going to do it. I don't see how we're going to do it. And so even though Moses was Moses, and even though God had given him the direction and the vision of the promised land, that was thwarted by the inner circle of leaders that they sent to go out and scope out the promised land. And because that group of leaders returned with no faith, they sent the entire nation for 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. Pretty high price to pay. Leaders matter. And I just want to say we got a great group of kind of inner circle leaders. And I kind of look at those people that are on staff, and I look at those people that are on the elder team and their spouses, because I kind of see them all as one. And I think, like, we're all on board here. You've got a group of faithful, faith-filled leaders. And we've been looking at this for a long time, and we're ready to roll. And then God uses the power of every single person. Every single person. I'm going to go over here, so just, I'm almost done. But if you got responsibilities, then just know that you got to run out the door right after this is over, okay? People get that. My leaders get upset with me. This is a negative example of a building in the Bible. The first building. It's called the Tower of Babel. Genesis chapter 11. This is what they said. They said, come, let's build a great city. For ourselves. Let's build a great city for ourselves. Let's do this. Let me tell you, this is not what we're doing. We don't want to build a church for us. And that's why we haven't. But that's where these guys are at. Let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous. Wow. Let me tell you, I'd love to use those opportunities to rev you up to get you to give money. I'm just not going to do it because we're not building something for ourselves. We're building something for our community. We're building something for the kingdom of God. We're building something that will create a revenue stream that will impact hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people over the life way beyond us being here. And we're not building something to make us famous. We're not building something to say, ooh, look how great those guys are. Look at Venture Church. Wow. Like, we've got to guard ourselves right up front in this process. Because this is human nature. This is why skylines are on. This is why we build NFL stadiums. Okay? I'm just like, look at us. Look at what great civilization we are. Look at our Eiffel Tower or our Space Needle or our Twin Towers. Look at whatever, okay? Look at the Pentagon. Look at whatever. It says this is us. Just drive on campus at UNC Charlotte if you want to know, like, look at us. Because they're building buildings for themselves and they're making a name for themselves. And to keep us from being scattered all over the world. Now, initially, you'd say, this is a good idea, right? Keep you scattered from all over the world. The problem with that is, what's the very first command that God gave to Adam and Eve? It's multiply and... I need to teach on that a little bit more. Multiply and fill the earth. See, God says multiply and go. And they're like, hey, we're going to get too scattered out here. Let's build something that's going to make us famous. And then let's keep us all together. See, this is the heart of humans. And unfortunately, it leaks over into building church buildings if we're not careful. So guard your heart up front. But the Lord came down to look at the city. The Lord's commentary on this is genius. And it is powerful. Listen to what he says. The Lord came down to look at the city and the tower and the people were building. Look, he said, the people are united and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. See, some of you say, well, if God wants it done, he's going to get it done, and we'll just kind of sit around and watch. It's not how God designed this thing. In fact, he infused us with incredible power individually so that when we collect ourselves together and set our mind to a task, his commentary on something that is anti his commands, anti his will, is that these people are united. And as they're united, nothing will be impossible. It's God's commentary on the power of people sticking together under a united vision. And look, we want to be united under God's direction and vision. But we need kind of alignment on all of those. God gives a vision to a leader. He surrounds that leader with a group of leaders. And then he mobilizes every individual that he's infused with incredible power as they link arms with others around them and together move forward. That's power. Like, this is what we're right on the edge of. I mean, it is there for the taking, if you will. Let's just put it in layman's term. If you had $1,000, like right now, and you drove out of here and you met somebody on the corner and said, hey, and he had a $2,000 lottery ticket, and you knew it was valid. And he said, hey, I'll give you this ticket for that $1,000. And you could go right down to the gas station and cash it. Would you do it? Most of you would, but some of you would be like, no, that's just, I don't know about that. Whatever. And you're skeptical, and you just kind of keep thinking, that's probably a scam, whatever. But if you knew it was true, would you do it? Double your money. That's kind of what God's sitting us at the edge of, in the very real sense. Here we go. But it's so much bigger than just that. So much bigger than just that. It's what God's calling us to. I hope you're ready for it, because it's going to take each of you doing this, sticking together to the point where you know what? Nothing's impossible. $925,000 is a lot of money. And honestly, it's a short amount of time to get it done. And so we just need you to leverage every possible thing. You're going to be asked to give more than you've ever given in the past over the next 3 months. And so I just want you to be ready for that. I want you to pray through it. But here's the thing. Lord willing, when we do this, it'll be the last time we ever raise money for a building. Ever. And that's good news. Because then we can go talk about packing 1 million meals. Or 2. Or 3. We raise money for that. You pray with me? God, thanks for the vision that you've given us. Thanks for these people who have been patient with the vision for a lot of years. Thanks for opening the door for this property. Thanks for filling us with the hope that says, God, you have a plan for us, for our future. And I ask, Lord, right at the front of this, Lord, that you would fill us with the humility that we need to make this so much about you and not about us. That we never beat our chest and say, look at us, look at Venture Church. But people would look right past us and marvel at you. God, this task of $925,000 is bigger than us. And so we're looking to you to provide for this. And you know the timetable on it. And we ask, Lord, that you would fill us with the faith that it takes to sacrifice, to give, and to collect ourselves together in a way that we look to you at the end of this in awe at your work. Thanks for inviting us into this. And I pray, Father, that as we step forward in faith, as we learn more and more about who you are and the plans that you have for us, Lord, that you'll use us to grow your kingdom over and over again in ways we can only begin to imagine. We pray this prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.